In this video, I want to talk about all the ways cheap Android phones are getting better than the flagship iPhone. In this case, I'm going to compare how cheap Android phones are beating the iPhone 15 and how they are better. iPhone is definitely lacking in a lot of features. Some features are getting long in the tooth and don't merit that $800, $1,000 price tag. So let's go over a lot of the features cheap Android phones, specifically Samsung phones, are competing very well and even beating the iPhone 15. First thing, build materials. Yes, the Samsung and cheap Android phones still have cheaper materials, but that doesn't mean that they have to feel cheap. In this example, the Samsung Galaxy A15, it feels very premium the way that they use plastic. It feels very similar, very similar to the materials used in the iPhone 15. So that's one thing that the $800 doesn't get you that much more premium feeling on the iPhone comparing to cheap Android phones. Next, the iPhone is lacking in the display quality and the refresh rate. Now, although it has a super nice Super Retina display, Android phones have Super AMOLED displays, and also they start off at 90 hertz now, which is better than the 60 hertz on the $800, $1,000 iPhone. So screens are just getting way better on the cheaper Androids. Next, it's going to be size. Cheaper Androids have overall for years been having bigger displays than the baseline iPhone. And typically you're getting at least 6.5 inches on these cheaper Android phones versus the 6.1 inches on the regular baseline iPhone 15. And if you want a bigger screen, you're gonna have to pony up and get for the Pro Max or the the Plus models or whatever. And it's basically, there's no reason for a cheap Android phone to have a bigger display, which most people like, than a $800 iPhone that doesn't have it. Next thing to note is software. Now, for a lot of people, and myself included, iOS is still the champ when it comes to software in a phone, operating system in a phone. But over the years, Samsung specifically has been pushing better and better software to its devices. Now you have several manufacturers like Samsung, you have the Pixel lineup, and you have Motorola. Those are the most those are the most well-known operating systems for Android in the Android world nowadays. There used to be more like LG and HTC, but each one is a little bit different. But I want to focus more on Samsung. And the good thing about this thing by Samsung is that even the expensive Samsung devices, the S24s and the Ultras, they have the same software. They're bringing that software to the cheaper Android phones, and they're bringing a lot of mature, meaningful features, such as kids mode. They have the hardware button on the camera to launch. The power button, you hit it twice and it opens up the camera. There's certain things that the Samsung experience, the software and Android on cheaper Android phones are just getting better and better. It may not be the best overall, but they are pushing the boundary and getting closer and closer to meaningful feature sets like the iPhone. So it's slowly catching up, and these are free phones that are just getting more and more features. A free Android phone from Samsung is going to have the same software and updates as its more expensive counterparts for $1,000. Next, these cheaper Android phones have the iPhone beat when it comes to storage. 128 gigs is now the new baseline for the cheap Android phones, and it matches the expensive iPhones at 128 gigs internally. But also, these cheaper Android phones also have micro SD card slots, which push the boundaries even more. So hands down, storage on the iPhone is lacking when you compare it to Android phones. One super simple feature that has been removed from the iPhone is still present in cheaper Android phones, and that's the headphone jack. Very important to a lot of people. I still use it to connect my phone to my car that doesn't have built-in Bluetooth, and I'm sure for a lot of people that is a handy feature. Next thing is Bluetooth. The free Android phones have the same 5.3 Bluetooth as the iPhone 15, but one is free. The iPhone costs $800. Android phones have caught up to iPhone in the Bluetooth department. Something that happened a few years ago that was really prevalent was that cheaper Android phones didn't have NFC, but that's not the case anymore. Now that's the standard, is having NFC in cheap Android phones, which has been an iPhone thing with Apple Pay. Basically, it doesn't matter if your phone is $1,000 or if it's free, you're going to have tap to pay NFC, and that's very, very necessary for a lot of people. And now you can get it, and you don't have to compromise when you think about price. Something new for the iPhone 15 models, and that is USB Type C. So the expensive iPhones have actually switched to the cheaper charging port that has been found on cheap Android phones for a long, long time. So now you could use the same charger from your laptop or your MacBook or your iPad or your Chromebook, Windows laptop, and use the same cable to charge both your Android phone and your iPhone. So it's kind of funny that the iPhone is borrowing a feature from the cheaper Android phones. Now, when it comes to unlocking your device, we differ here, but the cheaper Android phones standard now are at least having a fingerprint reader, and they're side mounted. Face ID is still very good on the iPhone, but when you really think about it, both of these devices can be unlocked very easily. And it really doesn't matter if you have the fingerprint reader or the Face ID. It's going to just do the same job. And in some cases, fingerprint side-mounted readers actually work better than Face ID because you could open it while the phone is still in your pocket. So that's an advantage on a cheaper Android phone. And now we get to probably one of the most important things about phones in general, and that's battery life. Cheap Android phones for years have been offering gigantic batteries, which offer awesome battery life, and it beats any iPhone in any price range. It beats it just so easily. We got 5,000 milliamp batteries on, that's like the baseline on most cheap Android phones. And versus the iPhone, any of them, if you don't go with the Plus models, they're around 3,300 milliamps. So battery life has always been a great option when you pick up a cheap Android phone. And even now, the standard charging speed is pretty fast now. It's 25-watt fast charging, which is either the same or a little bit faster than a typical iPhone charger. So cheaper Android phones, they got bigger batteries that they last longer, and they charge either the same or faster than iPhones. So I've been very impressed here in 2023, 2024, that cheap Android phones that you could get for free on prepaid from Metro, Boost, Cricket, and even if you get them on lock for like $200, they offer a lot of bang for your buck, and a lot of the features are actually catching up to iPhone or even surpassing them. They are just very impressive now. They compete very handily with $800, $1,000 iPhones. There simply is over the past couple of months and years, there's less and less reason to force yourself to spend $800 to get an iPhone. These cheaper Android phones are just simply good bang for your buck now. And I see less and less of a reason to get an iPhone, except there's still a couple of features that are lacking on any Android phone, the cheaper ones. And that's going to be the camera quality and the chipset. But other than that, if you're a regular person, you're probably not going to notice or care about those features as much, while you have all the other stuff that are found on cheap Android phones that are just actually better and more practical than on the iPhone. So that's been my take on cheap Android phones nowadays when you compare it to an $800, $1,000 iPhone.